With suctions on his face, he can stick any place. You should look at the new Mattel Master Universe Origins Leech, the evil master of power suction. The Masters Universe Origins Leech figure comes included with suction attack power. Figure also includes both a retro face and hands, and also a modern head sculpt with interchangeable hands and crossbow. Leech is a character you can certainly say does stick it out for Hordak, both literally and figuratively. Before we get a closer look at Leech and show you exactly how he does stick to things, how about we first actually grab the tape measure just to see how tall the figure stands. Including the top of his suction mouth, Leech stands at about 5.5 inches in height. 6 is up here. He doesn't come up to 6, so I would say he's only about 5.5 inches. And that works out to be a figure that's about 14 centimeters tall. Being that I don't have a lot of Horde help right now, I'm going to bring in for comparisons Buzzsaw Hordak. Granted, it's using the same body as regular Hordak. He's just going to be a little bit bigger on the back. Another figure we can also bring in, one of planned many. Here's what he also looks like next to the Horde Trooper. And for the time being, because I don't have any other characters for the Horde, I've also have a stand-in right now of Anti-Eternia He-Man. Being the colors of black and sort of that same similar orangey red that Hordak sports, I actually plan to really display Anti-Eternia He-Man with the rest of the Horde, as of course I get the rest of the figures that have come out so far. On to, though, the things that come included with Leech. The first thing we'll have a look at is a comic book, spotlighting Night of the Leech here on the front cover. Now, this is actually sporting him with the more modern face and hands, which, of course, we'll look at more in a second. On the back, of course, you have the promo images of the other figures, ones that I'm still planning to pick up, like, for example, the new He-Man, the new Skeletor from the 2000X series. Mantenna would also be one I'm definitely on the lookout for, and even interested to pick up Pighead, because I like the design of him, too. I did also already pick up Snout Spout, so of course his review will be coming up shortly thereafter. But then on the front, of course, we can look at Leech. It's not really much to really read here, but because I did order this online from a place that had at least US stock of this, at least there is actually word bubbles. You can make out what's going on here. If not for that, you'd be curious as to why He-Man, Stratos, Buzz Off, and of course Snout Spout is all sort of standing weirdly in a swamp. Of course, he is attacked by Leech down below. I don't want to give away the story in case anybody was planning to read this for themselves, but I got to say, like, the artwork, this artwork is some of the best I've seen in these comics. They really pick some talented artists to illustrate those pages inside. In the end, it looks like they're covered in slime. Snout Spout. I don't know. I guess Snout Spout does wash them off. I'm guessing that's what's happened here. They're covered in swamp slime. Snout Spout, sort of the equivalent of Aquaman. If it has something to do with water, Snout Spout's there to rescue everybody. If not for water, Snout Spout's basically just a guy with a really long nose. Anyways, that's the comic that came included with it. It is a little nicked. Unfortunately, I cut the corner of it while trying to remove it from its plastic prison. 'Tis just a flesh wound. I'm going to put that to the side. The figure also comes included with the crossbow that was also present when we had a look at Hordak. The crossbow, just to bring in the one that came included with Hordak, you can see is exactly the same. The plastic just molded in a different color. Do you like the front of it? It kind of looks like that bounty hunter from Empire Strikes Back. Bosk? Is it Bosk? Kind of looks like Bosk on the front. I don't know why. But yeah, it's the exact same crossbow, just one is red, one is, of course, white, and they work the exact same way. You're just going to pull this together, and you want to basically have this little lip of plastic loop onto the open section of the plastic, and then you got yourself a little crossbow, and then you just press the back to fire it off. The one that comes included with Leech, would you imagine, would work the exact same way? You guys are all very smart. You're going to just press the back again, and that fires it off. You would just imagine that it would fire off something like an invisible arrow. I don't know, invisible arrow. This does technically not clip into his hands right now. I mean, there is really, you could clip it onto his forearm, but just by the fact he does have the suction cups on these hands right now, it's just only going to squish those suction cups for right now. Of course, we can always bring this back when we swap up for the other hands the figure comes included with. As yes, the figure comes also included with some modernized hands. Just get the figure to stand here. For funny enough, the fact that the figure does suction onto things, he actually has a harder time, if you could believe it, to stand. Gonna have to really like suction him down. He's not gonna really do it on the best on this type of backdrop, but we'll make as best use of this as we can. There we go. Just lean him forward a little bit. Figure comes also included what almost seems to be like Ninja Turtle hands. What I would have liked if they could have actually put some webbing in between the hands, just again to bring back the comic, the one that I unfortunately just ripped to the corner there. You can see he's like, it got a little bit of webbing like in between his fingers. These definitely look more like Toidle hands than they do look like Leech hands. Maybe if they just put like a little webbing in between the fingers, but other than that, at least you get some modern hands that you can swap out for the figure. We'll do in a second. The figure also comes with a modern version of the head. And I'm honestly kind of torn when it comes to which way I would like to display this. This is obviously, I feel, a better, superior head sculpt. But being that this one looks more like the original vintage toy, again, I'm torn as to how I would want to have these displayed. For the longest time, I'm just collecting this line, thinking that they're more articulated retro figures. So for that, I would almost really want to stick with this head sculpt, even though really this is the better head of the two. This almost looks like a werewolf. We're going to change out the heads and the hands in a second. Obviously, the main draw for this is the fact he does have the Leech, the suction cup front on his mouth. This is not removable. I wouldn't want to start yanking this out from his mouth because it would defeat the purpose completely. But like the original vintage toy, you've got the sculpting of the Leech's face behind it. But then if you look at it from the front, it almost looks like he's got himself a megaphone. Attention, everybody! Attention! He really had nothing to really actually say. But being that it's a suction cup, it does ideally stick to things. It sticks some things better than others. Like, for example, if you were to take the comic book, you could stick it onto the comic book and hold it very, very well and secure. The hands work the exact same way as well as the feet. The feet are the only thing that really doesn't swap out for the figure when you want to switch them to a modern look. It's only really just the hands and the feet. But the suction cups, as you can see, they have at least detailed the hands, where the fingers at least would be on the outside of the suction cup. So it's not literally just a suction cup. At least they've done at least some work of hands and sculpting on the outside of that. That's a nice little touch. Feet are also kind of similar as well. He's got these really weird sort of stretched out toes. Now, one thing they've also done too, you may notice that on all the suction cups, there's this little lip of plastic. They put that there. So if, for example, even the mouth has that also as well. If you stick it to a surface, for example, do I have another surface? I only really have just the comic book to work from again. If you stick a hand to it, for example, you can kind of use this tab just to peel it away, enough that the air can get in there and it releases its suction. Of course, for the rest of the detailing of the figure, before we swap out the rest of the hands and, of course, the face, head sculpt, again, for it being a classic design, checks the boxes off nicely for a vintage-looking Leech. This is a figure I remember seeing in the stores, and even though I was getting a little more older in that age where I wasn't really collecting Master Universe by then, I seemed more interested still in the stuff that was coming out for the Horde than I was for Skeletor. Just a cool looking body though. Really like the paint that they've applied to not only the eyes, you got the little pupil there done in a white, the outer section of that eyeball being in the red, and it matches it nicely when we get, of course, to the modern head sculpt too, that has at least some visible teeth. This does have teeth also there as well, painted and sculpted nicely. You got some nice white added in there, and not quite the same coloring as the eyeball. It seems a little bit lighter of a color. And he sort of has this weird sort of tortoise shell, very armor up kind of body. He still has a Horde logo here on the front, so Hordak always likes to have everybody be property of him. Of course, he does have that Horde logo there on the front. The waist, though it does have some articulation, we'll talk more about the articulation in a second, has some decent detailing done to there as well. If you had like the original vintage toy, you'd pretty much be looking at the same here for Leech, just with some additional articulation, of course, as well. And he's got some Horde logo down below there as well, both on both the sides of the legs. And of course, then he does have suction feet, which again, don't work quite the greatest when it comes to, like, if I was a kid, leaning the figure, first of all, a little more further forward actually gets him to bounce just a little bit better. Now, if I was a kid, I was a younger kid back in the day when I had suction cup things, you know what kids would always do with suction cups? Well, there were two things. The less gross would just be to breathe actually onto the surface of it. You just get a little bit of like moisture on it, so that would allow it to stick onto things. Or you get some real gross kids, and I would do this as well when I was a kid. You would lick the suction cup on both the sides. Anything that basically was a suction cup, you'd lick it and then be able to stick it to things. The kids that would be watching that child doing that would, of course, not want to play with the toy because it would be covered in other kids' slimy spit. But that's also one thing that you can also do this as well. Obviously, I'm a little bit more sophisticated than that. I'm not going to be licking the suction cups. Tempted as I may be, I'm not going to lick them either to get this figure to stand. But yeah, to get him to stand, being the fact that the feet really aren't stable plastic, I find it actually helps to lean him forward just a little bit. Now, of course, because he's also the more modernized looking articulation on these figures, he does have the way to straighten out his legs. In the beginning, of course, we just only had him in a crouching pose, but if you did want to have him with the straighter legs, giving him a little higher of a reach, that's also one way that you can do it as well. Of course, the figure does have, again, some balancing issues. Okay, let's change out his hands here. First, the hands will do before we start tackling the head sculpt. You simply just want to untab those, unpeg those from the forearms. Do the exact same thing on the other side. These, by the way, have no articulation. They're just all like a molded single piece of plastic. But the hands that you actually then change them to actually do have a hinge joint. And then we can go attach these turtle hands. Seriously, they do. Don't they look like turtle hands? We'll do the exact same thing then on the other side. And it mentioned already, these ones do actually have a hinge, so you can move them back and forth. And they sort of still give you the sort of this same idea that he would be able to suction onto things. But I still wish that they could have added just a little bit of webbing in between the fingers. The last thing, of course, we'll do is remove the head. That just pops easily off the ball joint. And then you replace it now with the modern head sculpt. Now, you know, admittingly, it does look a lot nicer, doesn't it? It ruins, I think, the effect of what the figure had when he was first a vintage toy. I mean, I always remember the fact that Leech had just a real flat, well, again, it looked exactly like this, just a flat face here on the front with a megaphone mouth on the front. Still torn as really how I would want to display the figure, because, again, I'm planning to display these more, though, like the vintage toys, then I really would want to really stick with this head sculpt and not go the modern approach. But the modern head sculpt, though, is really good. They don't have the suction cup, but what they've sort of done differently here is they have a suctioned, almost suction where you'd imagine he'd be able to suck in the breath and then stick his face onto things. For the articulation here on the figure, we'll stick with the modern head sculpt for now. Being the fact it is on a ball joint, it does rotate the head all the way around, does look up quite a lot, does look down, and also rocks it back and forth. Hands, like all the others, the arms do come out. You can also rotate them all the way around. Let's just stop for a second. Let's stop for what I was doing with the articulation here on the figure. Why I'm stopping things right now, everybody's like curious, why is he stopping this review? I just also wanted to bring in, I never really bring these in, but I just wanted to show you that, like Leech, even though that Leech is using brand new tooled elements, like his arms, his torso, his lower legs, you can still swap them out, mix and match these. So yeah, if you want to use this head, the arms, the lower boots, or even like the torso down with another Masters figure, you can do that as well. Who's doing that? Probably nobody. Anyways, for the rest of the articulation, I don't know why I had to stop to do that. Arms rotate all the way around. The figure does have a swivel in his forearm, a hinge on his elbow, and the hands now swivel all the way around and hinge back and forth. You couldn't do that before. Solely just a swivel in the waist. The legs are on ball joints, so you can hinge those out this way. You can bring them forward, you can bring them back. The figure does have a single hinge in the knee, obviously, and you can rotate the lower leg, and you can rotate the boot, and you can also technically rotate the suction cup as well. Nice looking figure, but again, like, I'm not sure really how I would want to display this. For as good as this head sculpt is, I feel like I'm still, again, if I want to have him displayed like a vintage figure, I almost feel like I want to still go back and revert him to the way he was displayed when he was first taken out of his plastic prison. Because like the suction cup here on the front goes hand in hand with the way that Leech used to look. This head sculpt is, again, a modern take, a modern approach to the way that Leech could look like now on the shelf. And while it is, yeah, a vastly superior head, I gotta say I still like megaphone mouth Leech instead. Not really sure, again, which approach I'm going to take when it comes to displaying Leech on the shelf with the rest of my Horde figures. As for final looks here for Leech, I've got the figure spinning around on turntable. Because the turntable is also non-porous and smoother of a surface, those suction cup feet do a better job of suctioning themselves onto it. My vinyl backdrop, because it's, again, a little bit more porous, I had a harder time, as you could obviously see in this review, of getting those feet to attach properly. Yes, I could have just licked the bottom of the suction cup feet, but nobody would want to see that. Nobody would want to see the guy behind the camera licking the suction cups to stick it onto a surface. Not here. That's not going to happen here. The figure, of course, I've got him displayed in his modern head sculpt, and I feel almost like I'm robbing the opportunity to having this guy displayed like his classic counterpart. The whole idea, I feel, of Master Universe Origins is that you're getting these figures that look like their classic counterparts, just with better articulation. If that's the case, then I really would want to display Leech with his megaphone mouth the way he's displayed, of course, in the original retro carding, that's, I think, the approach I really want to make. But valid of an argument would be to get another one of these, so I can actually have the figure displayed with his modern head sculpt too. It's too good of a head sculpt, I feel, to be putting back in a baggie. So this would be a strong contender where I would feel it's best to pick up both of these. Get two versions, get two packages of Leech, and display them in two different ways. Now, when we have gotten ourselves modernized version head sculpts that have come included with other figures like Mosquitor, for example, I have no interest whatsoever to displaying with that alternate head sculpt. He goes classic all the time, but Leech is a harder one to debate as to which one is the better looking head sculpt, because both of them do a good job of at least the approach that they went with. This being a more modern take for Leech gives us an excellent looking Leech without the megaphone mouth. The other one, of course, if you want the classic looking design of Leech, then that's the way you're going to be going. I think either way, though, I'm still settling on the idea of displaying the figure with the suction cup hands. The turtle hands look fine, but to have them looking true like Leech, whether I decide to change the head or not, I'm going to be putting back those suction cup hands onto both of his forearms. What do you guys think of Leech? Let me know down below in the comments section. And if you had picked up the figure or planning to pick up the figure, which way are you planning to display him as? The modern-looking Leech without the megaphone mouth, or the Leech that comes the way he would have looked back in the 80s? Do let me know down below in the comments section. And also, again, if you enjoyed this video, want to hit it with a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing and do want to stick around for more, oh, please do, then make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. While we have wrapped up the review for Leech, the review of Snout Spout will be coming right around the corner, so stay tuned for that. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.